Hello, Ash, and welcome to Filmteractive Festival. It's great to have you.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be on.
You are actually the really interesting example of the entrepreneur who connects art, media, and technology. You are also a founder of Auxuman, the company that creates virtual beings and AI musicians. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, thanks. So my background is from art and music and the creators community. I've been making music for years, electronic music. I've been composing. And during my time making music, I had a deep interest in technology and computational platforms and how we use digital art. And because I started music with digital platforms, with computers, and basically I made my first piece of music on a Commodore 64. That sort of always has been my interest. And I
a multi-instrumentalist.
Yeah, and I studied classical music and I played a lot of real instruments, not digital instruments, but it always sort of led me back to synthesized and the synthesis of sound. Right. And synthesis of visuals and CGI over the years, and that's how I actually started the company with our founders, the company Auxuman, which is short for auxiliary human, and the reason for starting the company was that we wanted to create synthesized musicians and synthesized artists that could live with us and are virtual beings that we can tell stories through and see how we can build a future of media where we can interact with these virtual beings. Similar to video game worlds where you have non-player characters, NPCs. And obviously AI was a big part of it because you want to have personalities that are automated, personalities that are making things, and they have some sort of digital artificial talent.
What is the purpose of that? Because I did my research on the principles of your company, and I found a lot about the democratization of the content. So is that the main idea behind?
Yes. First, I have to start with the fact that since I was a kid, I believe that why we call some people creative and some other people not creative. And I think if I say short version of this, all humans dream when they sleep, and but not all humans can render their dreams into audiovisual content, right? Their imaginations that they can dream when they're sleeping. So we're creative internally, but externally we cannot express. All of us, we cannot express. Like I'm a trained musician, or I've made films, and I've been skilled to do it. So the labor part and the experience that we gain for maybe 20 years, 15 years to become a master in our art field, in the field of art that we are working in, is specific to some people who had the chance to do it. So we want to, through artificial intelligence and technologies that remove the labor part and actually allow for more curation and selection as an ability, change the way we create and we share our thoughts and imagination. So we believe in media that I personally believe in media that is closer to the brain and has less labor intensive process around the creation. And I think when you look at like the last 100 years of human creativity, we can identify curation and selection, which is the art of deciding what is right or wrong, the most human quality, the most interesting quality, and that's led to many new forms of expression, like DJs, producers that use sampling in their art, and for example, like a director like Tarantino samples movies to make a movie, right? This is the art of choice. This is the art of selection, and I believe AI will help us. Be for everybody, including yourself, I don't know, my grandmother, to become a creator of art through curation rather than creation.
So I start to become an artist in a way because of the help of AI that allows me to actually choose the piece of art that belongs best to my preferences.
Yeah, what we want to do is that we want to create the vessels, the instruments that are virtual beings, that are virtual musicians, that are game world, virtual world style environments that you can go into and feel like you're a part of it. And that system knows you well. That system, through data that you have obviously provided in the game, will know what your data pool or data set will be, right? And the final decision is always yours. You will curate what the machine has created. You will basically cherry pick the best moments that created. One example is this: like we have like minutes of audio generated from these new models that we use, and these AI models basically listen to music for hours, and they hallucinate and they dream of music again, and they always try to find the next sequence. So they dream of a part of a music and they want to think that what's going to happen next. During this process, we have a piece of 4 minute, 5 minute, let's say 10 minutes of audio generated. It's your job as a human now to select what's meaningful. It's the most important part of it is like the meaning behind music. And that is what we choose, and machines will never choose the meaning behind why I'm sharing this piece of music.
But if AI is learning my preferences, I become less and less involved in the process, right, of choices?
No, because it never learns the way you choose. It learns the way you listen. It doesn't learn the way you will intend to change your taste, right? Because we always change our taste based on our environment, based on the conversation that we had this morning, based on maybe the food that we had. Like we definitely change our mood because of our neurotransmitters in our brain and the way our psychology works. So the computer, the machines of the future will not have any say in that. Maybe they will do, but in a different, for a different purpose, not for the purpose of what we are creating. For the time being, the most important part is that computers can help us with the big part of labor that we spend years and years on, and we spend so much money on to learn and create a craft, while we're hoping that economically we can make something out of music. And that's just simply not true for everyone. That's simply not something that we can promise to everybody.
Are you disappointed with the process yourself based on your experience?
No, actually, I was relatively successful for a very experimental electronic musician. My music is absolutely nonsensical. It's like a hallucination of like collage of sound that is put together. And I try to envision the composition of 100 years from now. That's why I was breaking every rule possible to make something listenable, but very contrarian, right? But I see a person that wants to be a pop star, because I never wanted to be a pop star or like a famous like musician necessarily. I'm an experimenter, but I think a lot of younger people, through the means that they discover and they want to express themselves, like music, visuals, filmmaking, they want to also build a career, because obviously our economy, our current structure of economy, doesn't allow for you to just spend 20 years without having a financial plan around it, right? So I think what we want to disrupt and change immediately is that expression should not be exploited like that. And music labels and the music industry for the last 100 years, like entertainment industry in general, has exploited the creatives harshly, in my opinion. And the reward was making sense in the 50s, 60s, up to the 90s, in my opinion. And we saw things changing after Napster, pretty much. When Napster came in, and now Spotify is the result of all of that, we're seeing everything change. And I think it's fair to say it's now time to give that power of creation to a lot of people. It's going to be like tweets and writing, in my opinion, were something that bloggers did, and before that writers did for bulletins and magazines and newspapers. and everything will become democratized to a point that we realize, do we actually want to do this? Are we going to be like deeply crafted musicians? That's when the real musicians of 20 years from now, 50 years from now, are willing to spend 20 years without financial outcome. But most of the other people that just want to express themselves and maybe have a one-hit wonder situation and go out there and like enjoy the culture around music, they will have a streamline of generated AI music and AI visuals.
Right. I can imagine that the whole process of generating music by AI is real complex. And I don't want to go into the details, but I just would like to find out where does the database come from? So if we talk about AI musician, how physically is it possible for this virtual being to compose the music?
Yeah, I argue that we have more than enough permutations and possibilities within the recorded music that exists in the world,
right,
that we can use as a knowledge and a sort of transformed language that we can use for AI models.
So
and
you use internet as a source, right?
Yes, obviously, like the audio from the internet is more than enough. Like I really have to emphasize, it's more than enough to build a language around new music that is going to be new instances that is going to be created. We don't need a vast amount of imagination beyond what we have to create new instances that are randomized and they actually are observed as new forms, right? And the trick is here. Remember this: the machine is not creating anything; it's randomizing a lot of things. We are, in a sense, creating by choosing what is meaningful. We are still finding meaning in it. Right now, I'm in a position where I can make a record a day, an album, a full album a day. But that's because I only observe, because I only select, I only curate. And this is going to happen with movies as well. We're going to have an AI model in 5 to 10 years, in my opinion. That's being generous as well, like with the time. But 5 to 10 years, I believe there's going to be a director that is sitting in an editing room, and a set of servers, neural nets, are giving the team that is editing maybe 500 hours of footage, right? Out of that 500 hours of footage, this filmmaker is going to make a film. And this film has never been shot anywhere. It never had any actors. It just had a simple conditional rule at the beginning, which said, give me this amount of moods, this amount of spaces, these conversations. This is the basically brief that we can give to AI models and get what we want. A good example for it is GPT-3 models by OpenAI, which recently has caused a lot of questions around. Even coding can code itself. And if that is happening, media can make itself and remake itself. There's no reason for it not to be able to do that in the future. And with better models and cheaper models, I think we can achieve that with more compute power. And the only jobs that will exist, or I mean, new jobs will be created, is around who is going to write for the data set? Who's going to be the script writer for how we condition the data set? And these are new jobs that will emerge. And I think that's the beautiful thing about creativity and technology, that it creates new type of abstract jobs into mainstream jobs.
Hey, I was just thinking, if I would like to become a curator of my music choices, if I would like, for instance, to become a DJ without having any knowledge about actually sounds in the music, can I still do that? What would I need, and can I be successful?
I argue that most of the DJs I know, they don't have knowledge about music already. Right? That was the whole idea of DJing, is that I feel this room needs this type of song right now. And I don't know what scale it is in, or like, I don't care if, like, I just feel it's right.
Yeah.
Do you see where I'm going with this? It's like the last 10 years of our world has turned into feelings about something. Like, we have a sense of what is right or wrong. So I mean, I respect the fact that I'm a classical composer, and like I've done composition for many different things, and of course it does help for me to be technically equipped, and to be able to make something with the mathematics. But I don't think a DJ needs that. Like a DJ just like selects the best parts, and humans, in my opinion, have that ability. I don't think my grandmother is any different than Diplo in that sense.
Right. And what sort of music can be actually created by AI? So I just listened to some of your projects, especially Yona, and this is very experimental music. So it's far away from what we would call a popular music. And my question would be, like, is it just a matter of your choice? What sort of music, what genres you're going to use to create your music? Or is it always be more experimental than mainstream?
First of all, the focus of Auxuman was not like to be an AI music company. I have to say that. We are a virtual beings company. We want to create virtual worlds. And one of the qualities of these virtual worlds are generative music for the people who are going to use these virtual worlds. And I think with the genre of music specifically, what I curated, as I said, I was the user of this technology and this sort of mindset. And I chose to use the instances that I feel like they're appropriate, right? So if you use the same data sets and you get outcomes and you want to select them into pieces of music, you want to cut them into pieces of music, you will choose differently. There's no doubt about that. So the AI models, they don't necessarily dictate genre. They can come up with anything. It's like, as I said, like they listen and hallucinate. They listen and dream. And we're observing them do that. So genres are not a limit. Like no matter what like data sets you give them, they will respond with something that is slightly new, but it resembles that genre.
So if I cannot remember my dreams, the AI can help with that, right?
Yeah, that's more of a future thing, by the way. I think, for example, I usually use this at the last point of my presentations, which is referring to Neuralink, which is a company that is trying to connect our brains with computers and vice versa, creating an input-output channel with the computer. I think, yes, in the future, you would be thinking and the computer would immediately go and render it based on the signals. But that's 50 years from now. Like, we don't want to talk about it as if it's something happening 2 years from now. We don't want to freak out like that. Yeah.
Let's get back to the reality and what we have now, but let's talk also a little bit about the future. What is the future of music in terms of using the AI? Which direction are we heading? Because there are so many possibilities that this idea opens up. So I would like to ask you, as a professional that actually deals with it in everyday life, how do you perceive that?
Yeah, there are two parts to music. One is consumption, and one is creation. To me, like the way I see the future. With the consumption, Spotify has been very, very, very strong in building a future for consumption of music.
That was a game changer, actually.
Yeah, it's a game changer because it definitely it's getting to know people more, and it's rewarding people with something, right? This is the first time that the listener is rewarded. Right, this is very interesting, and we are moving towards egoless art. It's like the ego of the artist is not stroked. They're not just like flying their private jets and being like, oh, I had a multi-platinum, so I'm the king of the world. And I like that. And I like that because this means people are more and more involved with sharing culture.
Well, many smaller artists that couldn't be heard otherwise, they can actually promote themselves.
For sure. So see where this future will go is that I think the future of consumption will be affected by the future of creation. When everybody will have access to mining music and sourcing music, then everybody is a small artist and a big artist at the same time. So consumption of music will be also shared widely between the creator. There's no creator and listener. Everybody is a creator and a listener at the same time. That is the future of music. Yeah.
We get back to the old question, like, can all the content be actually free for the listeners?
And that is the only way, because if I am a creator and a listener at the same time, there will be no exploitation financially, and everybody gets a share of it, which is finally, gradually, it's going to be free, right? And I think this is controversial, but as I said, in terms of consumption and creation, if they unify in the future, in the far future now, this was the short future, in my opinion, it's like 5 to 10 years, we will hear the news about this, that creation and consumption is the same thing. Like, I'm both a musician and a music lover, right? And I think in the long term, music will be dominated by the consumption of music will be dominated by the way we experience computation, whether it's through a brain sensor or whatever it's going to be. Music is going to fall into that, because music is purely going to be digital data. It's going to be digits pretty much, and it's going to be code. And when that happens, I think we're going to remove the sound element. And that is going to get very interesting, in my opinion, because we have direct to brain stimuli, digital stimuli that includes music, visuals, and we can internally imagine a lot of things. And again, that's far in the future, but I think these are steps towards unifying our sensory experiences with data and computer creations.
Do you think that nowadays in our creative industry, achieving the idea of the free content and the open source sort of database that we can use for creating the music, but not only for that, is that actually doable? Like, can we achieve that in the near future? Because I have that feeling that would be tremendously hard. It's very hard.
It will be difficult if you're following the label model and the sort of achievement model, where I sell records and I change people's lives while the label is actually profiting off of it. It will be a bit difficult to.
So the theory is that the labels are not doing much, so let's get rid of them.
I mean, I don't want to sound like a revolutionary, like anti-label person without the sort of required research. But I've experienced it firsthand, so I can say as a musician what I feel it's appropriate for the future is that labels who existed like since the 1900s, early 1900s, up to this point, should not exist the way they exist right now. That's the whole point of the internet, Twitter, Facebook, social media. That's the whole point of creating these platforms. And mediators and tastemakers like labels, what they do right now is just create validation because of their old portfolio. For example, like I'm a label 20 years ago, I had these many, many good artists. Just because I had those artists, if I release content from this new discovery that I had, everybody should listen to it because I'm saying so. Well, to be honest, in this new world of like millions and millions of artists on Spotify, who the hell are you? You know what I mean? Like, why should we listen to a tastemaker that is from a whole different generation? So I think Gen Z Alpha will realize that and listen. I think they will listen to music and discover music through games, through the social media of the future, through platforms that are interactive. They can communicate with the artist in a gamified way rather than reading a blog. And like my back in the day, like we used to read Pitchfork. I mean, who reads Pitchfork? You know what I mean? To discover music. You discover music either on visual content, on social media, before COVID, in a party. These are the real means of discovery that are the classic means of discovery. It's like through multisensory and emotional connections.
You have probably a lot of tracks that are your favorite. I was going to ask you about your preferences and about how does it work with the AI? Is it the one-time experience, or is it something that you actually record and listen again and again? Is the whole idea of an AI just to create the piece of music?
That's a very interesting question. It's like, does AI create classics?
Yeah.
I think so. It's very, very capable of doing that. Do you know what makes something classic, in my opinion, is melody and harmony. Our brain is trained over thousands of years to find patterns, right, in sound and music. And even when we listen to birds, we remember what pattern they sung. That's how it sticks into our mind. And the reason it sticks into our brain is that it's the perfect stimuli in terms of sensory input. So that's why we care about resonance, right? Something that resonates well in terms of frequency, it sits into our brain really well because our structure, like our sensory structure, is trained to do that by nature, like by inheritance. And when a melody is perfect in terms of resonance, it falls into in the melodic pattern that our brains likes and absorbs. That will become a classic, right? Like that's like the perfect melodic and rhythmic pattern that our brain will forever remember. And I think we will find instances in AI-generated music that will contain that melody, and it's our job to pick that because the computer simply does not have that complexity of sensory acknowledgement and scanning of resonance the way we do. Maybe somebody is going to make an artificial version of that. I don't know, but because we do have that, we can curate and select that melody, and that's going to become a classic. So it's like when we talk about drum machines, right? Drum machines did that. Like drummers were super pissed off because this machine you could just like press a bunch of buttons, like it would give you a groovy pattern, right? With the shuffle, cool, right? Feel, with this swing, and it was really interesting. And this
drummers were really excited about it.
yeah, exactly. And now I think we're facing the same thing. Now finally we're saying, here you go. There's a whole package. It writes lyrics. It sings the song. It can have a voice. It can express itself, and it has a face, right? So the idea of virtual beings that are AI driven, it's about that, and we select what to do with them.
Yeah, I'm just curious to know if I use AI. Can I use it to the extent that it will actually create the music for me? Depends on my mood, depends on what I want. Just the original piece of music that is actually perfect for me to listen at this particular time. I mean, without actually choices. Are we going that direction, or maybe we are already there? Like,
yes, we are already there in consumption, but in creation, we still have work to do because what you mentioned are data points. And data points are interesting in a way that they're similar to cooking, right? You have ingredients, you have a certain amount of it and certain types of it. And the better these ingredients are, the better your cooking will be. And I think with AI music, it will be the same thing. You have an hour in the day, an occasion, a mood or feeling, certain types of friends that you have. And these are valuable data points and can trigger different data sets.
So you reckon this is the direction that we're probably going to hit soon?
One of the directions that are available very soon, I think. Within the next 2 years, there are definitely tools that are, for example, like if Splice, the company that offers samples, if they actually build up a more data-oriented, data-focused library that is interactive, with your mood, with your time, with the type of music that you're making, the story that you're telling, it will become more and more visible, I think, in the musical creation.
And what is your mission at the moment? Like, what is your focus when we talk about your daily work? Like, is this different types of projects to create this virtual artists, or maybe?
Well, Auxuman right now we're building. We're done with the initial test of virtual beings. Now we want to build the world for people. So Auxuman is building the place for this experience, right? And the place for everybody to be able to use the Auxuman's app and be able to go there and create music, create virtual beings.
So we're talking about the platform that actually allows it to.
Yeah, I think calling it a platform is the right thing, and Auxuman will offer this for a new generation of media, I think, which is fully synthetic, fully virtualized, fully collaborative with the machines, and it's a long way to go, and it's a big mission. But we're working on that. Yeah.
I really like the idea. I will keep my fingers crossed. I think we all deserve it.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I think we in 2020s we want to see new type of platforms. I'm really tired of opening Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, like these experiences. Like, it's just, come on. Like we need really like disruptive ways of looking at media, and there are a bunch of companies doing it in the virtual beings realm, and I like it because I think the next personal computer or the next experience is you talking to a AI character and being able to communicate and expressing through them, and it's funny because the only way we can create this one-on-one connection is being on the same platform with them, with whatever you want to call them, virtual beings, synthetic beings, and we're synthesized, represented, and they're synthesized, represented, and we're all one in this new digital world. And that's what we're imagining, a new digital world, a new platform for expression and new feelings, new types of emotions.
If our audience, the Filmteractive audience, would like to experience that, like now, soon, today, tomorrow, what's your advice? Like, where can we go? What can we do to use actually AI to make these decisions, to maybe create our piece of music? Like, I'm really curious to try. I never did it, and
I have to say, unfortunately, that is our mission, to build the means, and it will take a lot of resources, obviously. But right now, you have to be a bit more technical to be able to use these, and you have to study the groundworks of how to generate music, how to generate visuals. But there are a lot of resources out there in terms of artificial intelligence and visuals and music. For example, GANs, neural nets, sample RNN for music, OpenAI's research with Jukebox. And all of these are available, and people can look into it and see what they can create around this.
Or we can actually book the flight and meet you in London.
We have to set up meetings. I prefer video calls, but yeah.
Let's try to do it next time. It's so lovely to talk with you about it. And I will, again, wait for the platform and actually encourage all of the open-minded people to use it. It's a great idea.
Yeah, in 2021, Auxuman, watch what Auxuman is doing, and it will be a great start to the decade, I think, to introduce new worlds.
Yeah, we'll be waiting for that. Thank you so much for the conversation.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All the best, and speak to you soon.
Take care.